As I find myself in the mounted position, probably the single most common escape to the mounted position is the good time and tested elbow escape. The most commonly seen variations of the elbow escape involve my opponent turning onto his side and trapping my foot. Once he traps my foot, he pushes out and traps my knee, then he moves in the other direction, brings the second knee through, and puts me back in some form of guard. Okay, it's a move that I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. It's probably one of the first moves you get taught in the sport of jiu-jitsu, and one you'll use almost every day you're training. It goes in a very predictable sequence. It starts with a foot, goes to a knee, and then goes to the other side of the body. What we do is we surrender our foot to our opponent. So we're mounted on our training partner, and from here I see him turning into an elbow escape. I willingly give him the foot. Okay, as he takes the foot, I take my knee and I move back and center my body over my training partner's hips. I take my arm and punch through as a reverse underhook. Now I face back towards my training partner and I physically lift his foot out so that he no longer has the figure of 4. I catch the second foot, elbow goes inside, and once again we catch hip and head and find ourselves in the perfect position to go on the attack and establish our favorite back position attacks. Facing the other direction, we're here working with our training partner. I deliberately offer my foot to my opponent. How do I do that? Go back. I physically take my foot off the floor. So it's like a bait. It's so easy for my opponent to hit that elbow escape now. Now from this position, I reposition my hands and I backstep so that I'm centered directly over my training partner's hips. Regardless of how my opponent is pushing on me, that's going to make it easy for me to punch through to a reverse underhook. Now, I like in these circumstances to uncross the feet. It's not essential that you do that, but I like to do it. I uncross my training partner's feet and catch the second foot. My elbow goes behind my training partner's knee, and as a result, we easily pass our opponent over and capture head and hip and go into potentially winning position. Okay, so that would be a good example of using it from a mounted position. Now let's look at one of the most common positions in the sport of jiu-jitsu, half guard top. From a half guard top scenario, let's face in this direction. Half guard top, my opponent's working from this position. We're going to start off by tripoding and walking across our training partner's body. I'm going to put my hand on the hip, make a strong lock on my legs, and put my elbow inside my training partner's knee so that I can slip my knee free and drive across into a kind of a quasi-mounted position. Let's move this way. So there's a sense in which I'm mounted because I have 2 knees on the floor, but I'm not really mounted because he still has my foot. Okay. From this kind of quasi-mounted situation, it's not a difficult thing for us to hit that same back step that we just saw. I bring my leg back on through, I punch through to a reverse underhook. My general preference here is to unhook my opponent's feet, but if that should prove difficult to do, then I'll simply hook my opponent's opposite foot and hit that same roll through that we've been looking at. From here, head and hips, and we're in a good attacking position. Once again, from half guard top, my opponent can have the underhook, doesn't matter. He locks high on my legs. I'm going to put my hand on the hip and my elbow inside his knee. Okay, as he holds on tight, I'm just going to push with my elbow and turn my knee so that I can drive my knee to the floor. And we end up in this interesting position. Okay. There's a sense in which you are mounted because you do have 2 knees on the floor, but there's an obvious sense in which you're not mounted because he still has your foot. This kind of quasi-mounted position. We sit back over our training partner's hips. If he's pushing on my hips, I just go through underneath my opponent. If not, I just put my hand into a reverse underhook situation. From here, I grip hold of my training partner's opposite foot, and from here, a simple roll will take us through. Look how that rolling action exposes my training partner's back, hips, and head. Now from here we go on through and into our favorite attacking positions. These rolling entrances, which are possible in so many different scenarios in which we find ourselves in the sport of jiu-jitsu, are a fantastic way of supplementing your ability, especially out of scramble situations as you gain in skill, to take your opponent's back, establish your hooks, hooks and get into the winning positions to utilize the systems that we saw earlier in the series.